Do you want to go live? Oh, you are live.
Hi, and welcome to this week's Ruby Heart live stream with Level Astrologer, songwriter, and musician Mark Borax. My name is Marcella Eversole, and I just have a couple of announcements before we move into our stream today, which is Songwriting from the Soul, Freeing Your Inner Muse. First, Mark and I are out at the beach at a Gunkwit celebrating his book launch last week. We just want to send a really warm thank you to everybody who helped us. We were able to get #1 as a new release on Amazon, and it was because all of you really showed up and bought books and ebooks and all different sorts of, we have the audiobook, the ebook, and the book. And all of it really helped and made a difference. So thank you. And I will drop in the chat for those of you that still haven't bought the book, a reminder, along with, for those of you that have, a way that you can write a review, which also helps us out. So anyway, again, big thanks to everybody. And we're excited for Songwriting from the Soul, Freeing Your Inner Muse today. And I will turn it over to Mark.
Thanks, Marcella. And welcome everybody to Ruby Heart Stream live streams. Songwriting from the Soul, Freeing Your Inner Muse. I chose to depart from my recent topics, which have pertained more to my new book, The Ruby Heart of the Dragon, Sun Signs for Our Times, which is being released all around the world right now, and I'm starting to get feedback from other readers and other astrologers, which is making me feel that so many of the intentions I tried to build into that narrative worked, actually. And I suppose it's a little hard when you're a writer, especially with such a long and fully engaging project as this book. It took me 4 years and 3 months of writing 7 days a week. And in the course of dismantling the zodiac and building it back up again, I found myself discovering a new understanding about the underlying cohesion of the zodiac. How you have to go through Aries long before you could get to Capricorn, or what Scorpio has to do with Taurus. And so I was digging and digging during that writing, and my experience ended up reminding me of my songwriting experience, especially something that I learned from Paul McCartney, who worked with placeholder lyrics. When he would come up with a melody and he was nowhere near understanding what the finished lyric was going to be, but he needed to remember the melody, so he would sometimes come up with nonsense words that had the same meter, that had the same accents as what was going to be the eventual lyric, or pretty much the same anyway. Well, I found the same thing happening during the writing of my book, in the sense that some deeper parts of me, you could call it the soul, or my psychic ability, or my connection with higher powers. I don't always break these things down to know exactly where they're coming from, but some part of me from the very beginning, when I began writing that book about 4.5 years ago, already knew where this was all going. But my everyday human mind barely had a clue and had to catch up to it, just like with a placeholder lyric. The famous example of that is the song Yesterday, which Paul dreamed of. And he didn't dream the words, he just dreamed the melody. And the melody was so strong and haunting, and seemed to him when he woke up as if he had to have been dreaming about in some old jazz song or something. It couldn't, the last thing he thought was it was something that was being written by his own subconscious. He thought he must be remembering a melody if it's such a strong melody. But when he woke up, he started calling friends of his and singing the melody to them without the words, to see if any of them had heard it. Nobody knew it. And in order to remember it, he called it scrambled eggs. And so it was a total nonsense lyric, but it was only a placeholder. It was never intended to be the finished song, but it could help him work the melody and remember it. Scrambled eggs, oh, how I love your legs. And, totally ridiculous, except that it really worked until the actual lyric could get written. Well, it was similar to that with my book. Even though a book is, of course, many more words than a song, there was still this sense that some part of me was far wiser than the everyday part of me, which took more than 4 years to catch up to what that other part of me knew. And I feel as though it took me a lot of trust, so that the places where my ideas hadn't yet linked up, where my chapters weren't yet fully coherent, I had to kind of patiently sit with those, like Paul was sitting with scrambled eggs until yesterday arrived. In this case, it took a lot longer because it was a much longer work. And I think what that indicates is that some part of me, and let's extend this to say some part of us all, is much more in touch with the song of our soul, with the art of our life, than our normal everyday self might know. In our normal everyday life, there are some times where we have these breakthroughs, sometimes with the help of entheogens, the help of ayahuasca or acid or ecstasy or pot gummies. where you break through what seems to be happening both in you and around you. And all of a sudden, it's like you get a direct line to the muse, a direct line to the macrocosm, where you're not just going about your own little life in your own little way. That's pretty much disconnected from everything, as if you were an island. But even when you're not fully aware of it, there's this inner music. There's this song of the soul. And I have a song here that I wrote, which is in the key of A. And as I wrote this song, I was reminded that Jimi Hendrix said that Earth is in A. And, I think if anyone would know that, it would probably be Jimmy, that the key of our planet is A. And this song only has 3 chords in it, but I found a way to use those chords and make them much less repetitious. It only has 1 progression, but I use the progression a couple of different ways, especially in contrast with the lyrics. So here's how it starts out. Deep in my soul, I am opening to the song that I hear. Deep in my heart, I am listening for the music of the sphere. So that's the kind of the preamble to the song. The song is called Dinanda, and it means bliss of the giver in Sanskrit, which I love because English has a word called bliss and it has a word called giver, but we don't have any word or concept for a particular certain kind of bliss. It's not just any old bliss, it's the bliss of giving, the bliss of the giver. And I think because that speaks so deeply to me, because it's one of my karmic lessons I've been trying to learn in this life for 68 years, is the bliss of giving. And it really resonated with me. Now, that little preamble of the song that I just sang, deep in my soul, I am opening to the song that I hear. Deep in my heart, I am listening for the music of the spheres. There's a little change I made in there because when I first wrote the song, it went, deep in my soul, I am opening to the song that I hear. Deep in my heart, I am listening to the music of the spheres. And I think after playing that song, actually for a few years, maybe many years, I realized it would be much stronger by shifting one little word. Instead of saying, deep in my heart, I am listening to the music of the spheres, I switched it to, deep in my heart, I am listening for the music of the spheres. I felt it made it less smug and contrite. I wasn't bragging about, I'm already listening to the music of the spheres, but I'm leaning on it. I'm listening for the music of the spheres. I found that the substitution of that one word, changing the word to the word for, really put energy into the opening of that song, because I'm I'm recruiting the listener. I'm not showing off. I'm not saying already in my heart, I'm in this exalted state where I get to listen to the music of the spheres. But deep in my heart, I'm really listening for the music of the spheres. I'm leaning on it. And I think it makes the song in a subtle way more friendly and open to listeners, because they could relate to that. Maybe you're listening for the music of the spheres too. Maybe you haven't heard it yet, or maybe you've heard it before, but now together we're listening for it. So deep in my soul, I am opening to the music. Sorry. Deep in my soul, I am opening. I'm opening to the song that I hear. Deep in my heart, I am listening for the music of the sphere. Ooh, ah, At that point, where I was just singing those vocalizations, I often have guest musicians sitting in, and when I say deep in my heart, I'm listening for the music of the spheres, they get to play that on the violin or something, and so I'm drawing in the listener even more, and then I kind of state the theme. Denanda, Denanda, bliss of the giver. Denanda, Denanda means bliss of the giver. How many times can I ask myself this question? Why, oh why am I alive? How many ups and downs on this karmic carousel before I find my way back to my life? So here's where, even though I'm using the same exact progression, same chords, instead of finger picking it, I'm strumming it, and I'm increasing the intensity of it. Because now I'm not just deep in my soul anymore. Opening the song, I open the song from a very deep place. Deep in my soul, I'm opening to the song that I hear. Because when you're writing a song, when I'm writing a song, it takes a while to really tune in to what that song is inside me, to what wants to happen. In the last 2 or 3 years, I haven't fully kept count. I haven't written a single song that stuck. I think it's been about 3 years or so, and very strange for me. This is like the first time in 40 years that there'd be anything like a 3-year period where I've tried to write a whole bunch of songs and none of them stuck. Maybe because all my creative mojo was going into my book. I don't know. But to get to the song on the inside, I begin deep in my soul. Then I go to how many times must I ask myself this question? Why, oh, why am I alive? I figure a lot of modern people right now can relate to that. Why am I here? What am I doing? How many times I ask this question? Why am I alive? How many ups and downs on this karmic carousel before I find my way back to my life? In my writing, in my books, in my podcasts, and in my songs, I often refer to a karmic carousel, a karmic merry-go-round, a karmic roller coaster, because that's what it feels like. A big part of what we're all doing here in the physical plane is chasing ourselves from life to life to life to life, chasing someone on the merry-go-round, chasing love, chasing truth, chasing nirvana. So now we're not in the realm of the soul where I'm trying to listen to the music of the spheres. Now I'm back in the karmic gumbo of everyday life. Ask myself this question: why, oh, why am I alive? How many ups and downs on this karmic carousel before I'm? How many times must I even mention what the hell am I doing in this race? I don't know what's worse, all this fear and apprehension, or watching you burn while standing in one place. Tananda, Tananda, bliss of the giver. So I ask these questions. How many times must I ask myself this question? Why, oh, why am I alive? How many ups and downs on this karmic carousel before I find my way back to my life? How many times must I even mention, what the hell am I doing in this race? I don't know what's worse, all this fear and apprehension, or watching you burn while standing in one place. I have no idea where that line came from. Or watching you burn while standing in one place. When my son, Sky, was 10 years old or so, he said to me, Papa, every time you sing that song, it terrifies me. That line terrified him. And I don't know who I was talking about. But instead of really answering all those questions, I go right to Dhananda, bliss of the giver. And so I'm counterpointing it because I try to avoid preachy songs, didactic songs. I do enough teaching in my astrology career and my book and my readings and the classes that I teach. My songs have an element of teaching sometimes, but I hate being preached to. I hate didactic stuff. That's why I love the songs of Cat Stevens, who taught me a lot of spiritual lessons when I was a late teenager without being preachy. And so I don't answer any of those questions. I just shift right to Dhananda, bliss of the giver. Dhananda, bliss of the giver. And I think that freeing your inner muse doesn't only apply to songwriting and book writing. It has to do with not just learning how to write songs from the soul, but how to live from the soul. And that art, that way of being, takes a constant leaning on spirit, leaning on the muse. You know, even if you're one of these people who feel that God or the goddess has let you down over and over and over, or there's no such thing as any higher power, you can't let them off the hook. You can't say to the higher powers, I no longer need your help. I'm cursing you. Go away from me. You've turned everything into shit, and I no longer trust or care or believe. And I think that deep in my heart, I'm listening for the music of the spheres. I'm really working it. I'm really leaning on it. And I think this applies to more than just songwriting from the soul, but freeing your inner muse is really getting in touch with the music of your life. And sometimes the music of your life will have an external soundtrack. You know, the rhythm of a streetcar in New Orleans gave me a song once, just at the Oregon Country Fair at dawn. We were playing some beautiful music. We were jamming. And at the end of every guitar line, a waking bird chirped the rest of the line for us, and we didn't have to finish it. And it kept happening over and over. We would play the first 8 or 9 notes, and the bird would finish like the last 5 notes. And I think that's how it is. I think that there are many forces, even now, in such a fallen world, in such a world that has gotten stuck far from its love. There's a song of the soul. There's music of the spheres. Hendrix said it was in A. You know, I wrote that song Dananda in A. It only has 3 chords, and they just keep repeating the same way. But I bounce different versions of the melody off those songs, and which I think makes it interesting. It becomes more interesting when I have a few musical accompanists to join in, because it is a really repetitious thing to only have the same 3 chords going through the same progression over and over and over, and nothing else happens. But in contrast to that repetitious steadiness, the melody goes through a few changes. And I think there's something in that too, that even when your life is kind of crazy, that there's some steady song inside it. I'm just going to check with Marcella to see if we have any comments or questions or answers or anything. Marcella?
I'm
Yeah.
entering the stream. Yeah, I don't see any comments in here that you can respond to. I mean, I just would love to add that it's really been incredible, actually, even though I've complained a lot about living in the home of with a songwriter who is working out songs and what it takes to work out songs. But, you know, I just wanted to comment how amazing it really is to have such a sacred connection to source, that you, Mark Borax, just write more music and more songs than anyone I've ever seen. It's really quite phenomenal, and just such a way of being able to let it move through. And if it doesn't stick, it doesn't stick. But you know, there's like a graveyard of songs in my heart of the ones that don't make it. But I do love that you wove just love into the book. So it's beautiful also to see how the songwriting also is poetry, so it can show up in different forms.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's there are times when music is the only thing that keeps me sane. If in a much different way than all my astrology work. So, you know, I do readings for people. I teach classes. I'm teaching a bunch of students a 3-year course now that we have final openings for. If anyone's interested in joining our 3-year course, we still have 2 years of it left, and you can come in. And we do this every 3 years. We launch another 3-year group, and those things fulfill me. Teaching has become one of the most deeply fulfilling things in my life right now. And so, along with writing my astrology book, teaching courses in the College of Visionaries and Wizards, and doing readings, music is different because it really feeds me. and it helps me express on a primal level. Sometimes words can be tricky little devils, and the mind has infinite pitfalls and mirror mazes with strange reflections. But music really cuts through that. I remember somebody once said to me, "It's impossible to lie while you're singing." And maybe that's true, but it certainly has a truth to it. And the journey of singing has been a long journey for me that's led me through many, many deep places. So I hope that little glimpse into my process of songwriting has served you in your own way. And again, I'm so deeply grateful to so many of you around the world. I have been crying tears of joy for weeks now. Every day I'm crying, and I can't remember the last time I cried every day, and I have missed it. It's probably been 30 years since I cried every day for months on end. And those times when I could cry that much, I felt very close to my soul. And many times since then, I've wished I could cry. And I'm crying a lot now, just tears of joy at how my book is bringing people together from different periods of my life. People that I knew 50 years ago, people that I knew 40 years ago and 30 years ago and 20 years ago, and people that I've never even met, these beautiful podcast hosts. So I'm so deeply being touched that this gift I've given to the world, this shamanic tearing down of the zodiac and rebuilding it from the soul, is really returning to me here in the earliest phase of its release. A lot of deep soul, gifts of the soul. So thank you.
Beautiful. And we just have a few more of these left for the summer. So if you haven't caught one and you want to catch them live, I think we've got 2 or 3 left.
I think 2.
We have 2 left. So we'll be here for another couple Wednesdays, and then we'll take a break and we'll come back.